I'm Rowan van Dijk, head brewer of Moersleutel Craft Brewery, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest is Davide Callegari of Brew York, and he is here for a conversation that goes beyond the brewhouse and into topics that matter to brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers. First, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at allaboutbeer. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out allaboutbeer.com/support. We'll get into the conversation in just a moment, but first, this message.
Hi, this is Tim Shasha from Berkeley Yeast. Our mission is to give brewers better tools that are affordable and easy to use. Our team has been developing Tropics yeast for nearly 10 years, and we just launched it in a dried format. This is a yeast strain with high thiol biotransformation activity, which means it's great for making tropical forward hazy IPAs. I'll tell you more about how it works later in the show, or you can check the show notes for our recent article called All About Thiols.
Malteurop has long been a pillar of North American malting, and they're growing to meet the needs of the modern brewer. Their brand new warehouse expansion at the Winona, Minnesota Malt House marks a new chapter in their commitment to service and reliability. With increased capacity and optimized logistics at the Winona hub, Malteurop is delivering the quality you expect with the speed you need. Discover the Malteurop difference at malteuropmaltingco.com. Senos is redefining fermentation intelligence. Their new Senos M3 is a multi-parametric in-tank sensor that delivers real-time fermentation insights and predictive analytics, so brewers can monitor critical variables, catch issues early, and get consistent results every batch. Brew smarter, waste less, and profit more with Senos. Turn your tank into a smart tank. Order your Senos M3 at senos.com. That's SENNOS.com.
Welcome, and I'm very pleased to have David of Brew York as my guest today. David is
Hello,
currently
thank you
head
very much.
brewer. David is currently head brewer at Brew York, which is a brewery based, perhaps unsurprisingly, in York, in the UK. Brew York sits in one of the most traditional brewing regions of the UK, but has always produced modern and experimental beers. Even in their cask products, they always try to introduce a twist. David oversees product planning, recipes, and scaling up projects. Hey, David. We have met several times over the years. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you very much. Nice to see you again. And it's probably almost time that we organize for this year like collaboration or something, since it's been tradition now.
It's been almost a yearly tradition by
Yeah,
now, right?
yes, absolutely. So thanks for having me here.
Thank you for coming on the show.
And I can
First
start.
question,
Yeah, go on.
just as an introduction.
Yes.
How did you end up in the brewing industry? And can you tell us something about your road towards Brew York?
Yes, so I think like most people that participated in this podcast and most people in the brewing industry, it was not quite a forward way. I was doing something completely different originally. So I was working in genetics, which sounds exciting, but it was not for me. So I worked in research for a bit. Then I decided that I wasn't liking it so much. I started to think about, oh, what else do I like? I was, of course, like many others, homebrewing. So I thought, let's make it a job, and maybe it's going to pay better than research in Italy. And indeed, not by a very wide margin, I have to say, but it's much more exciting. At least it's much better for me. I moved to UK. I started working initially in a small brew pub. Then I went to a couple of jobs. I landed in probably the first interesting one was Fine Ales in Scotland. Uh, Amazing brewery. Quite remote in Argyll. It's a beautiful place. If you do have to visit one brewery in your life, make it Fine Ale. But yeah, it was definitely an adventure, but it was very remote. So after a couple of years or so, I decided to go the other way around completely. So I went to London. I worked for Beavertown. in particular on the Tempus project, which was the Beavertown sour and barrel aging program. Unfortunately, it was already Heineken time, so they were kind of phasing it out. So after a bit, I moved to Lervig, and for 3 years, I worked exclusively on barrel aging for Lervig, mostly imperial stout and barley wines and so on. So clean barrel aging, but we also had a smaller but quite interesting sour project. Then again, I decided, okay, I do like that, but I want to see brewing in general again. So I went to Ireland and worked for a very long time on Irish stouts for Oaras. And then I came in Brew York. I think Brew York is probably the place I like the most because it's a very good mix of everything. It's big enough for having, like process optimization and so on, but it's also still in a position to have a lot of experimental products, a lot of variety. We do collaborations, we do a bit of the exciting things that you do have in the brewing industry, rather than just focusing on getting 0.01% more on an imperial stout, which is great, but yeah, this is more interesting. So I hope
And
that's
is
more or
is that
less.
also what brought you to Brew York? That balance?
Yes, I think I really enjoy both the parts because I joined the brewing industry originally because I was when I was in research, I was really missing the creative part of a job in general, because in particular when you're not high up and you're doing research, you're doing like just repetitive tasks and so on. It's not what people think in general. So I was really missing that, and that's definitely something that you have the most in smaller breweries, but I do enjoy the more scientific part of it as well. So that's a place that allows for both of them, at least a bit of both of them. So that's a bit more my place, I'd say.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. For me the same.
Mm.
Um, so today recording this, it's a Wednesday night.
Yep.
What as the head brewer of Brew York, what does your daily let's do a rundown of a Wednesday. How does
Yeah.
your
Okay.
Wednesday look like?
So well, this week, so we are still a small enough team for me to having to do a bit of everything sometimes. So for example,
How
this
many
Wednesday,
people?
sorry.
How many people are working at Brew York nowadays?
All Brew York, I'm not even sure because we have quite a big pub part. So we have pub estate now. In production is 12. We work like shorter shifts. We don't do nights. We don't do weekends. We only do checks on the weekends. So it's still like a pretty social kind of work. And yeah, like for example, today I spent a lot of time tidying up the yard, which sounds dull, but it's needed sometimes. I'm sure you know. And space is always limited, so I moved pallets for a very long time today. In general, it's like my main tasks are more or less organizing production. What do we brew on the week? We try to run week by week. So we try to have a plan for the week and the next week, which is
Mhm.
good. Could be more, but it's really good considering previous experiences. Having a set 2 weeks of planning is decent. Um, Organizing the shifts, people managing, of course. We do have quite a bit of space for new recipes, so there is always a little bit of recipe development. I try not to keep it all for myself, but we usually try to share projects together with other people. So for most of the recipe, I try to assign them to someone, some of my brewers, and maybe let them give ideas, work with them, or let them design the recipe and maybe just correct some things and so on. So we try to give everyone an opportunity to actually do a bit of product development. And again, we are very
That's
well
so
known
cool.
for like a lot of beer, a lot of different beers. So we do still have space. We are trying to focus a bit more on core range and consistency, which is also one of the reasons that they asked me to join, considering the previous experience. But we still have quite a bit of space for experimenting.
What's the most exciting project right now? What's if I ask you that, what project pops in mind?
For me, for myself at the moment, I will say we are building up a nitrogen generator, which is interesting. It's something that I've always been kind of a fan of, and I don't understand why way more breweries have it, because it's
Mhm.
it's really useful, and considering how CO2 is at the moment, price and everything, it's really going to save a lot of headaches. Also, for the environmental point of view, it's extremely useful. We are not quite at the scale for having like a CO2 recovery system, which means that at the moment we put a lot of CO2, we waste a lot of CO2 putting just out in the atmosphere, and we have to buy a lot of CO2 to carbonate our beer and so on. It's not exactly environmentally friendly. With the nitrogen generator, you can cut quite a bit. We think that we might reach maybe 75% less of CO2,
Wow.
which will be great. One
How are you
day,
gonna do that?
maybe. Sorry?
How are you gonna reach 75% reduction? What
We
are you gonna do with the nitro?
basically we will try to do everything but carbonation. So
Okay.
probably the main challenge is going to be purging, because you do have to purge in a completely different way than what you do with CO2. With CO2 is handy because it's fast, while nitrogen, basically air is mostly nitrogen. So it takes much longer. You have to go slowly. What we plan to do is trying to do it overnight, which means that we will have a lot more like pre-planning to do, because if we need a tank the day after, we need to start purging it over the night before. And it's not always that easy in a brewery. I'm sure you know when you have our size of production and our amount of tanks, we don't really have space to spare. So
Mhm.
it's going to be interesting to plan around this. Then all the other tasks, like we can swap to nitrogen in all of our, like in on the canning machine, on the keg filler and washer. So instead of pushing out and flushing with CO2, we can do it with nitrogen, just put pressure on the kegs with CO2. So reducing, not eliminating, but reducing the amount of CO2 and so on. So pushing tanks.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's going to, like, we haven't started yet. We're still building it. So we'll have to see how it goes, of course, but it's a lot to work on, and it's quite interesting.
Well, it's a big investment, big gain, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's
So,
it's a
sounds
the thing is,
exciting.
like, nowadays you can get affordable nitrogen generators, like affordable. They're a big investment, but they're not as incredibly expensive as they used to be. And they have a fairly quick return considering the price of CO2.
Mhm.
So I think it is something that a lot of people should think about.
So we talked about one potential new upgrade to the brewery, but can you
Mm.
give us a quick overview of the brewery? What does it look like? What is the brewing system you make wort on? How do the fermenters look like? What's the volumes you make?
So at the moment per year we are about 1.5 million liters. So
Mhm.
for the UK we are like medium small, let's say. There's people with even still consider craft that are on a way bigger scale, but it's still like bigger than a small brewery. Um, we have an interesting brewing system because we have a double mash tun and a double kettle, which is really handy. It's British system, so mash lotter ton together. We do have jackets, so we can do step mash, but we usually don't because British brewing, I suppose. So single infusion. Um, and we have two kettles, which means we can do two brews at the same time. Or if we do only one brew, we usually use one kettle for boiling and the second kettle for whirlpool as a whirlpool, which is again it's very handy because, for example, at the moment we have one of the two mash tuns that is out of order because we have to repair the gearbox. If we
Hmm.
didn't have the other one, we would not be brewing. On a normal day, it's very handy to do double batches. And the fact that we can use one of the kettles as a whirlpool, it allows us to lower the temperature for whirlpool, which has been very useful. So instead of whirlpooling, adding whirlpool hops at 99 or whatever degrees, we tend to go down to about 80.
Do you put
And
it through a heat exchanger?
yes, yeah, yeah. We can go from one tank to the other through the heat exchanger. We don't have to do like odd hose connections or so on. So it's quite a smart setup, and it's very handy for that because we can do it quite quickly and without like recirculating for very long and so on. So it's handy. Most of our beers have a whirlpool, and in some cases we had a few recipes that we changed from dry hop to whirlpool hops, and now they're not dry hopped anymore, and they work very well. So it's been that's been an interesting project, and it's very useful even for beers that have a dry hop. You do build backbone of flavor that you will not have otherwise. So in
Nice.
general,
What's then you
yeah.
use the other mash tun as a hop back as well, or
No, no, we haven't yet. Maybe, who knows? I did use Hopback quite a bit because Finance has one, and you can do very interesting things. For example, here in the UK, Finance is very well known for Jarl, which is a single hop Citra cask beer, and it, everyone believes that is a dry hop beer because you do have a lot of Citra flavor, and it's only hop back. So, but
oh,
no, we haven't tried that yet. Maybe we never know. We don't use flower hops or plugs. We only use pellets, so everything goes in whirlpool or dry hop. We've tried a lot of different dry hopping systems, warm fermentation hops, and so on. So we played a lot with that. Brewing size, we either brew 55 hectoliters or 110 hectoliters. We have two quadruple batch tanks, which are 220,000.
oh well, okay.
Sorry, sorry, uh, 220 hectoliters.
Mhm.
So in that case, it's mostly for our lagers. So that's a double brew basis. So it's 2 days of brew that go into them.
Yeah. And then you have some single batch fermenters as well
Yes, yeah, yeah.
for the smaller
We have
stuff.
we have a mix of 110, 55, and the two big boys. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
we can brew
And
to lower amount, like we can also brew down to 3,000 liters, basically. Mostly that's for very small things, so very high ABV, which we don't do as much anymore. Taxation change in the UK kind of killed that sector, unfortunately, because now there's a higher taxation for everything that is over 8.4, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So you are going to see way less imperial stouts from the UK. But when we still do them sometimes. In general, that's a much smaller batch. We loader for shorter. Well, sometimes we even just do first wort, or for example, we do smaller amount when we do the alcohol-free beers.
And all the tanks are closed or are they open or
All closed. No, no, it's all cylindroconical. It's very, very like international
modern? Yeah.
style. So pretty much everything can be used. Is a double use tank. We have dedicated BBTs and we try to stick to them, but all the tanks can be converted to BBTs. So
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
lot of flexibility as well.
Then in between the fermenter and the BBT, is there a centrifuge or a filter or anything?
Centrifuge.
Pasteurization?
No, no, we do centrifuge. We have an Alfa Laval. Um, it's a pretty small centrifuge, but for our size, we can do everything within a shift easily. Everything in centrifuge except for the cask beer. So cask beer does not go to BBTs at all. So it's only crush cooled and then racked. And we still do a fair bit of casks in general. Our percentage of cask changes between a third and 20%. So it's still a decent amount.
That's of 1.5 million liters. That's a lot of liters.
It's a lot of casks, yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of casks to clean.
And then you do all kinds of packagings. So cask, keg, bottle,
We
cans.
we we don't bottle, we only can. We do only cans. We do like very special releases. This year is going to be the 10th birthday, so we are going to release a bottle and waxed beer. So for my joy, after 3 years of waxing bottles, I'll do it again. But that's basically a hand machine. Like it's yeah, it's not a machine, not even a machine. It's basically a slightly bigger home brewing kit. Because in general we don't do bottles just for very 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 special, very very small scale things. Everything goes in cans. It's handy. I did work a lot with bottles, for example, in Ireland. So in other markets, it's still quite a big thing, but here it's it's getting rarer and rarer. We do casks, kegs, and cans basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Um, so you're based in Yorkshire, right?
Yes,
Um, that region has very strong expectations of what is the so-called proper pint, right?
yes.
So how does this affect the beers you brew?
So it's interesting because I think, well, everyone likes their own local scene, of course, but I think considering everywhere I worked, uh, the the general quality here is quite high in uh, in keg beer, but also in cask beer. Probably cask beer is you can find casks everywhere in the UK, but there's some pockets in particular in the countries where cask is still king, basically. And probably the biggest region like that is Yorkshire and the North, not just Yorkshire. So casks are high quality and they're well maintained because one of the things that people complain about is like, oh, I tried a cask and it was sour, or a lot of that doesn't just depend on cask beer by itself or the cask itself or the brewery, but serving, maintaining the line and so on. Cask cask beer is quite heavy on, is quite high maintenance on both ways. So both in the brewery but also in the pub. And here is one of those places where people know what they're doing, and you do have a very high chance to find a good and well-maintained cask beer. So if you do enter that game, you need to be prepared to have very good competition. And it is quite here is quite traditional, so people have some expectation on the beer, but at the same time they understand craft. So you also need to be interesting. So there is this mixture of like people that want something traditional and people that want something modern. Young people get into cask pretty fast, so it's not just old man game. So, for example, for us, since the foundation of Brew York, they always tried to do modern interpretation of beers. So we do have some more traditional products. We have a best bitter, for example, it's called Maris the Otter. Almost all of our names are puns of some kind. Sometimes
Great
they
name, great
completely
name.
fly over my head, so I have to ask what they're talking about. But most of them are like puns or pop culture references. But even in this one, it's a best bitter. It's brown as a best bitter, but we used to use American hops in it. It used to be Cascade Centennial, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely a different hopping than the classic, Faggles, Goldings, and so on. Uh, at at some point, they decided to change and use British hops, but it's aromatic British hops. So now we are using Laurel and we are using Cascade, but UK grown Cascade. So it's still quite different from most of the traditional bitters that you can get. But we do get the traditional bitter drinkers that like it because it's different from the others. So you get into
Smart,
this
yeah.
space that people that like a traditional pint, they're going to try ours because, oh, it's something that I can recognize, but it has a twist that I can enjoy. So
That's fun. Yeah, how does UK grown Cascade compare to the US grown Cascade?
I think it's much more delicate.
Mhm.
So I think like UK is in UK now we're able to grow quite interesting hops, like quite aromatic hops. We're still a bit behind on the downside processing, so it's much harder to process the hops that you have in a way that we don't have basically the fancy pelletizers that you can find in Yakima or in Crosby or whatever. So I think whenever we try them fresh, they're amazing. When they're pelletized, they are a bit more muted. So you do always notice the difference, and if you compare one to one, so I don't know, like a very good American Cascade and a very good British Cascade, you're going to say, oh yeah, the American one is much more powerful, which is true. But at the same time, it works perfectly. For example, in this beer we're using it in because probably a very punchy American Cascade would be too much. While in this way, with this one, we can get a much more rounded and balanced flavor. Flavor-wise, they're not miles away, so they're on similar notes, but it's rounder in a way. It's a bit more delicate. It's a
Mhm.
bit, it has a bit more of the spiciness that sometimes you associate with European hops. And a bit less of the like grapefruit skin and so on, which is still present, but you do also have those slightly different notes.
Do you see that as a trend in the UK that UK brewers are trying to use more UK ingredients as well?
A bit, yes. Again, with the hops is difficult because the whole industry is so used to to what the known hops now. So it's really hard, in particular if you are known as hoppy beer brewery. It's really hard to walk away from a Mosaic or Simcoe, the usual ones, because they're great hops. The people know them. People are recognize some flavors that they're going to look for. So it's always they'll always be around. There's no way to change completely, but there are more and more breweries that are at least trying to use different things. There's a few hop growers in the UK that are going for more and more experimental varieties. So it is definitely something that is growing. Um, and again, the quality is there's things that can be improved for sure, but the quality is improving as well. So I can see that is going to be a thing that will slowly grow. And when growers or suppliers and so on will be confident to put a bit more investment into their equipment, probably the quality will make quite a big jump.
Exactly. And you mentioned the taxes that got increased 2 years ago already, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
I'm not exactly sure when it was, but quite recently. We work on tax brackets basically. So um, different ABVs get taxed in a different way. So you have a number of categories. For example, the first one, so the cheaper tax used to be up to 3.8, now is up to 3.4. So before every single brewery had a lot of 3.8 beers. 3.8 was probably the most common beer, in particular in cask beer, that you could find around. Then they moved to 3.4, so everyone started to brew 3.4 beers that before they were not really a thing. But the main change was on the higher hand because uh, over 8 point, I don't remember how it was before, but now over 8.4, you follow into the high taxation basically. So it was still higher because of the higher ABV, but now it's much higher. And for our products, we calculated that uh, the barrel age stuffs that we were doing, which was about 10-11%, with the new taxation, which since being more than 8.4, the cans got almost £2 overnight, £2 increase overnight. So
yeah,
you, you
that's a lot overnight.
yes, so you really saw like a crash in production of everything, anything that was over 8.4% quite quickly because and also it happened in time. Not so much when it happened straight away, but like people are way more conscious on spending now. So
Mm,
they're more careful on where they're going to put their money in. So there were expensive beers already. They got even more expensive. So less and less people are willing to pay those kind of prices. And for me, it was a bit of a shock because I came, well, not straight away. I was in Ireland before, but I came from the Norwegian market where the higher you go, the better. So
yeah, that's very comparable to the Dutch market.
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. We were selling a lot of in the Netherlands when I was in Lerwick. It was probably not our first, but our second foreign market.
yeah.
So
The Netherlands is a very big beer
yeah,
country for specialty beer, especially
yeah,
the heavy stuff. Yeah,
yes, and even now. Whenever we do stronger beers, they always go a little bit in the Netherlands. So
yeah. Well, we are going to take a short break for this
yes.
message and then come right back for more of this conversation with Davide Callegari of Brew York.
Malt Europe has long been a pillar of North American malting, and they're growing to meet the needs of the modern brewer. Their brand new warehouse expansion at the Winona, Minnesota Malt House marks a new chapter in their commitment to service and reliability. With increased capacity and optimized logistics at the Winona hub, Malt Europe is delivering the quality you expect with the speed you need. Discover the Malt Europe difference at malteuropemaltingco.com. Senos is redefining fermentation intelligence. Their new Senos M3 is a multi-parametric in-tank sensor that delivers real-time fermentation insights and predictive analytics, so brewers can monitor critical variables, catch issues early, and get consistent results every batch. Brew smarter, waste less, and profit more with Senos. Turn your tank into a smart tank. Order your Senos M3 at senos.com. That's SENNOS.com.
Tim here again from Berkeley Yeast. Our Tropics yeast is based on a London ale strain, but we added a new gene to its genome that codes for a unique thiol-releasing enzyme. The enzyme converts the precursors in barley to free thiols that smell and taste like passionfruit and grapefruit. It's super clean. No off flavors like burnt rubber or other sulfurous notes, just tropical aromatics. You don't have to do anything unusual either, like mash hopping. Just pitch dry Tropics and supercharge your hazy IPA.
Welcome back to the chat with Davide Callegari of Brew York. Let's take a deep dive on cask beer, and let's also get a bit more technical. Can you run us through the cask beer process at Brew York? I have a couple of quick questions, but like, do you use priming sugar, finings? What is the carbonation levels going in and out the cask? I have a couple, but just start going on a tangent, please.
Yes. Okay. So, in theory, you could say that brewing for casks and in casks is the easiest thing that you can do because you brew the beer, ferment the beer, crush cool, put it in casks, and you don't have to do anything else, pretty much. But of course, it's never that easy. So, we do both dry hopped and non-dry hopped beers in cask. Actually, our biggest seller, which is called Calmer Chameleon, is one of the beers that I mentioned before. It used to be a dry hopped beer, but then now it's only a Whirlpool hop beer, so it does not have dry hop. It's a bright beer. There is still a big gap in casks. You have like the whatever is a bit more traditional or whatever is not specifically an APA, let's say, it's usually bright. How do you go bright in cask? Because cask, the core of the idea is that you have re-fermentation in cask. You put a beer that is almost, not quite, but almost flat in casks, and you need a little bit of re-fermentation to get that bit of sparkliness that it actually needs. Otherwise, it's completely flat, and cask should not be completely flat. So how do you match the two things? First of all, for the re-fermentation itself, we don't prime and we don't add yeast. So we rely on whatever sugar and yeast is left in the beer. So again, it's not centrifuge. So we have to make sure to be within parameters. For us, that will be between 500,000 and 1.5 million cells to make sure that you have enough yeast to do a bit of re-fermentation, not too much yeast so you avoid like flocks and haziness. And about haziness, finings, another big discussion around cask is finings. Should we use them? Should we not use them? Most of the casks are fined with isinglass, which is a fish-derived product, which means that is not vegetarian. It's derived from fish bladders. And I don't know if have you ever used it?
No,
It's
I've never.
Yeah, we don't use it. We actually never use it. We use a silica-based fining. So it's something that our main concern was we want the beer to be accessible even to people that don't want to consume
Mhm.
meat or fish and so on. So we use the silica-based one. It's not as nuclear as the isinglass. The isinglass can create a completely bright beer, even starting from something that is quite hazy. While with the silica-based one, you do have to, if you want it completely bright, you do have to have it like a low haze, and then you can go bright. If you have high haze, you're not going to go bright. So it's a bit more demanding. but we like it, and we are getting very good results with it, and we can state that the beer is vegan. Um, Isinglass, it's gross. It's a jelly. It's
Mhm.
full of metabisulfites to keep it stable, so it stings. If you drink a cask, you're not going to taste or smell anything like that because it creates a net that makes everything precipitate, so it's on the bottom. But whenever you wash casks, and they're from a brew, because we don't have our own casks, so we use rented casks. So our casks are usually from other breweries. If they use them, then you empty your cask before cleaning it, and it's absolutely horrendous. And you really question yourself, like, did I really drink something with that inside? Even if you know it makes sense in a way, but it's yeah. I'm very happy that we don't use that. We use the silica based one, much more.
Well, where do you add it? Do you add it in
We
the
do that
cask
direct
itself?
in the cask itself. Yes, it's always like a two-phase fining. So you have an auxiliary fining that goes into the tank and the silica fining that goes into the cask. So you dose one cask by one, and they kind of complement each other. One is positive charge, the other one is negative charge. They create this net that bring most of the particles down on the bottom of the cask. We don't find all the casks because we do quite a bit of hazy casks. Now they're a thing. Back even just like in some areas, even like 5 years ago, a hazy cask would come back to the brewery because people would think it was spoiled. Because quite often when beer was even maybe filtered or isinglass is used, you can really go completely bright, like lager bright, and people got used to think that the cask will turn hazy only when it was going out of date or getting spoiled for any reason. We also have to remember the casks are basically once they're tapped, they're basically open. That's why you have to drink there within 3, maybe 4 days, or they're just exposed to oxygen. Um, and now it's acceptable to have hazy casks. You have to make sure that you tell people. So on all our pump clips, we always have naturally hazy or something like that. But now NEPAs in casks are a thing. Which again is kind of funny because what's the one thing you definitely don't want in your NEPA? Oxygen. And you fill a cask when it's full of oxygen and you have a re-fermentation going on, so you do need a bit of oxygen. So it's really like it's something that you should not do, but that you have to do, and you can have good results. You can have very good cask napas, but you do really have to drink them fresh as possible. And in that case,
How
it's
how
of
long
course. Mm,
how long does it usually take to go to the pub? Let's say you
um
have filled the New England IPA on cask.
yeah,
Um,
we We usually hold cask for a week before releasing them. So we fill them, hold them for a week. So we make sure that the re-fermentation does happen. Because in general, if you send them straight away, people will tap them straight away. So they might be flat. So we hold them for a week. And then in general, it's really like product dependent. Some products are slower, but like we only give them 3 months. So the best
yeah.
before is 3 months. Uh, we we usually sell them out completely way earlier than that. In particular, for the popular products or for the new products, we always have quite a high demand. We do brew them on purpose on smaller sizes, so we rather brew them more often than in bigger batches to make sure that they're always fresh. But between the fact that we have a very good distribution, we use a couple of distributors that are working very well for us, and we do have our own distribution through our own pubs. We go through cask batches very fast. So we can have the luxury of doing like sometimes heavily hopped beer in cask because
Yeah.
we know that it's going to go long, long before the best before date. And again, it does help that here people do drink a lot of cask. So you know that we are quite we are quite confident that once the cask is stopped, people will drink it before the 3 days.
Cool. I guess how do you check if carbonation is done? What's the QA QC behind it? Do you just tap a
We
cask to see if it's okay?
we kind of do because again, like since we have our own pubs and we have our own tap room in at the
Ah,
brewery,
okay.
we do have two cask lines, so we can use that. But we usually do we take a bottle sample which we have to do anyway because that's going to be like the shelf life sample. It's going to be the ABV sample because since you do have re-fermentation, the legal ABV that you have to state is not the ABV that you have when you fill the cask, is the ABV that you have once
Mm,
re-fermentation has happened,
yeah.
which is almost the same because of course it's like just a few points of difference, but you still have to do it after re-fermentation to make sure that it's consistent with what you declare. So we do check with those bottle samples, and after a week we can open the bottle. Ah, it has a bit of fizz, it has a bit of carbonation, so we know that it worked basically.
Ready to release.
Yes.
You do a couple of modern craft styles on cask, I saw. So you already mentioned the New England IPA.
Yeah.
Um, what styles otherwise work very well on cask? If you can name a couple of modern styles, and is there a couple that you tried and it really was nothing?
So another one that I think it works very well, and probably in particular in the UK, if you ask people about Brew York, they're probably going to name one beer, which is Tom Coco, which is funny because it's a milk stout with chocolate, tonka beans, and vanilla. So as far from traditional brewing as you can go,
Hmm.
but it was actually made for Camera. I don't know if you know about Camera. Camera is the campaign for real ale. So it's a group of people, usually not in their 20s. In general, it's like elderly people that are very fond on cask beer, and they create this kind of organization to protect cask beer. And they're very, very traditional, of course. Like they consider themselves a bit of like the guardians of tradition for cask beer. And this beer was actually designed for them for one of their festival. And of course, since it's us, we decided to go as far as we can from what they usually get. It's still a stout, so traditional cask people are quite fond on darker beers in cask. But again, yeah, lactose, tonka beans. What the hell is tonka beans?
What's the
Vanilla
ABV?
and sorry, it's
What's the ABV?
4.8. 4.8.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's on the no, it's on the like more reasonable cask strength. It's very hard to do cask for like strong beers because people are really not used to that. Although we do have now we only do it every now and then, but we do have Big Eagle, which is a West Coast IPA, which is 6%, which is not, it won't sound high for you, but for cask beer is quite high ABV. So, but yeah, the Tonkoko, even at the Camera event, was quite a big success, which is surprising, again, considering kind of people that usually attend. So that's definitely one that works very well. And we are quite known for sweet beers. We do use a lot of lactose, and it's a bit sad for me because I'm lactose intolerant. So, but we do a lot of things. We've done funky things that probably we shouldn't have. For example, we have one of our very popular brands. For quite a long time, it was the biggest one by volume in New York. Is Juice Foresight, which is a mango and guava IPA, guava and lactose IPA. And in very small amount, sometimes we did some casks. Yeah, that's one that I will say that let's not. It's okay in kegs. We don't need cask of that. While, for example, Tonkoku is really good in cask. So
Okay. Mango
I've
passion
seen.
fruit lactose IPA. Okay. Well, can't wait to try it on cask.
Yeah, in cask, yes.
Um, some brewers also say that nitro pouring and cask conditioning gives a fairly similar mouthfeel. You worked at O'Hara's, did a lot of nitro stouts. Now you work at Brew York, do a lot of cask. What's your stance on this discussion?
I think they're not the same, but you can get similar results. In particular, with the similar, like if you take um, a beer with some body, so again maybe like porter, stout, or even any other beer that has a good body by itself. Uh, you put it in cask, you have a good re-fermentation. Through the re-fermentation, you do really manage to have very fine, um, very fine bubbles, similar to when you spun your beer rather than just using forced carbonation. You do manage to create very fine bubbles, so you have a quite creamy head. Although there is one caveat to all this, you need to use a sparkler. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If you do all that, beer with a good body, good re-fermentation in cask, and use a sparkler, then you're not far away from nitrogen, actually. So I do agree on that.
Interesting. Um, when you want to get a beer nitrogenated,
Mm.
what is the most important thing to take care of?
Uh, Pressure and speed.
Speed, yeah. What do you mean by speed?
So the best way that we managed to do it, in particular when I was in Ireland, was uh, running nitrogen quite high pressure into a serpentine, where you can get a lot of like a lot of flow, not a lot of flow, but like a fast flow through a serpentine with high pressure nitrogen while recirculating in tank. Or otherwise, if you do it through which is what we do now, if you do it through a carb stone, you need to be patient. Uh, you really need to have a very good balance between the pressure in and the pressure out. So you need to balance very well the amount of nitrogen that you put in against the like the pressure release that you have on your tank. And it's quite easy to go too much on one way or too much on the other, so can take absolutely forever. If you manage to balance them very well, so have the have the right head pressure, have the right pressure on the carbstone, and have the right like pressure release in a way, then you can make it. You should not have very high carbonation in your beer. So we do spun our beer, so we centrifuge with some degrees of carbonation already present. If that's too much, it's very hard for nitrogen to kick out CO2 from solution and go into solution because CO2 is way more soluble. So you can't fight against too much CO2, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So stay away from the CO2 is the message.
Yes, yes, absolutely. and
Again.
be very patient and
Yeah,
get
exactly.
some spare nitrogen bottles ready just in case.
Um, that brings us almost to the end of the show.
Yep.
I have a couple of quick fire questions. So
Yes.
just answer in one word or two.
Yes.
Cask ale or nitro pour?
Ooh, I'm going to say Cascade. I love
Sparkler or
Nitro,
no
but
sparkler?
absolutely Sparkler. I will die on this hill. Absolutely Sparkler. No Sparkler is wrong.
Do we have a favorite yeast?
I re the one that I can't use in Brew York because it's banned, Saison yeast.
Citra or Fuggles?
I'm sorry for all the British people listening, but Citra.
Favorite beer on cask from a different brewery?
Oh, it's hard to pick one, but I think if I really have to just say one, uh, table table beer from the kernel.
Thank you for being on the show and answering
Thank
some
you very much.
questions.
Thank you.
David will be back on the next episode of this show as the host, having a conversation with a brewer of his choosing. That will be on the air next week, so make sure you tune in for that. A reminder, visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at allaboutbeer. To support journalism in the beer space, check out allaboutbeer.com/support. I am Rowan van Dijk from Moersleutel Craft Brewery, and thank you for listening to the Brewer to Brewer podcast.
Senos is redefining fermentation intelligence. Their new Senos M3 is a multi-parametric in-tank sensor that delivers real-time fermentation insights and predictive analytics, so brewers can monitor critical variables, catch issues early, and get consistent results every batch. Brew smarter, waste less, and profit more with Senos. Turn your tank into a smart tank. Order your Senos M3 at senos.com. That's SENNOS.com.
Tim here again from Berkeley Yeast. My favorite part about Tropics in a dried format is that it makes it easy to use Tropics more like an ingredient than a yeast strain. It's a great tool for turning tropical flavors up or down. Tropics on its own makes big notes of passionfruit and grapefruit, which is great for a lot of recipes, but sometimes you want to dial that thiol character down. Easy. You can just co-pitch at different rates with your house strain. If you want to dial it up, especially if you're using a pretty aggressive hop bill, then just add Tropics Boost. It's pure precursors dissolved in water and ethanol. Go to berkeleyyeast.com to find out how to turn the thiol dial to exactly where you want it.
Malt Europe has long been a pillar of North American malting, and they're growing to meet the needs of the modern brewer. Their brand new warehouse expansion at the Winona, Minnesota Malt House marks a new chapter in their commitment to service and reliability. With increased capacity and optimized logistics at the Winona hub, Malt Europe is delivering the quality you expect with the speed you need. Discover the Malt Europe difference at malteuropemaltingco.com.